pantheon of comedic legends such as Richard Pryor, Gilda Radner, and Mel Brooks, today we look at another actor whose comedic wizardry graced the screen with Gene Wilder. Harrison Ford? Yep, it's the Ford Fiesta! Indy Adam Jones.
And I'm Paul Clearin' Preston Danger.
Welcome to the big show, counting down the Harrison Ford movies all the way until Call of the Wild. How far away from that movie? Well, 41 episodes. But we'll get there, because who doesn't want to see every single Harrison Ford movie? And for me, this show finally got me to schedule watching, for the first time, The Frisco Kid. This is another early career Western for Ford, and we'll tell you all about it in our recap. But first, some housekeeping. We appreciate your tuning in, and if you want to go one step beyond to help us out, please like and share these posts. Subscribe wherever possible, hit the alerts, and of course, follow us on social media at The Movie Guys, pretty much everywhere, and themovieguys.net, where you can find all of our old shows that have led up to this appearance by Harrison Ford as outlaw Tommy Lillard. But first... what's new in the world of Harrison Ford? Paul?
Well, first of all, the worst news ever. Indiana Jones 5, for lack of a better title, is pushed to 2023.
Oh my God.
Kind of inevitable, with the injury, just delaying things on the shoot. And so that's where we are. We got to wait a whole nother year for this, which was supposed to come out next July. It will now be the July after that, damn near 2 years.
Oh man, I thought the timing was going to work out so perfect that we would wrap up.
I know.
It would go. Well, the show would go straight from Call of the Wild and then right in theaters.
Well, the way we've delayed some of our episodes,
yeah.
I think it's been over a month since the last one.
Yeah, I know.
Then hey, maybe we will make it by July 2023.
We got jobs in a Monday show now, so
Yeah, exactly. But in the best news ever, well, Harrison Ford is back on the set.
Yes.
So he is working on the film. There were some photos of him with Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Yeah.
Right? Phoebe Waller-Bridge? Yeah. And they're doing something where it looks like they had just... they had parachutes on, like they had just jumped out of a plane or something, or a helicopter, who knows what. So they're back at it, which is good news.
That's good news. I mean, the worst news ever would be he died in a parachuting accident.
That would be the okay.
The okayest news is the movie's been pushed.
Yeah, let me pull back on my previous statement. But this means also he is out. I'm presuming this is because of Indiana Jones, again, going on much longer than the shoot expected.
Yeah.
But he's out of a new movie called The Burial.
Burial.
This is about a bankrupt funeral homeowner who decides to sue a rival businessman over a handshake deal gone wrong. So he hires a flamboyant attorney to handle the case. And he was supposed to be in that. It looks like Tommy Lee Jones, his former rival from The Fugitive, is going to take over that role alongside Jamie Foxx. So it might have been cool to see Ford and Jamie Foxx in a movie together, but
yeah.
Now you're going to get Tommy Lee Jones instead. So
that kind of makes me think The Burial. When you say that premise, I'm in a big Steven Soderbergh kick lately, and I'm like, that'd make a good Steven Soderbergh movie premise. Kind of funny, fun drama, and it just made me realize, I want to see Harrison Ford in a Steven Soderbergh movie.
We all know the story that was close, right?
Oh no,
they turned down Traffic.
Traffic, right?
Yeah, which is a shame.
That's a real shame. Yeah.
Michael Douglas was great in it, but I don't know. Maybe he thought, I'm still a leading man. I'm 6 days, 7 nights, or whatever. But it would have been cool to see him in a big prestige project like that.
No, this ensemble bullshit.
Okay. So this is the worst news ever. Actually, a crew member died on the set of Indiana Jones 5.
Oh no.
And of course, it's sad. It's contributing to the moniker troubled production.
Yeah.
After Ford's injury, and also, of course, after the Rust incident. This is naturally news, but it was all natural causes. Apparently, he just died, but just
he didn't get shot by the lead. I mean, that's a significant difference.
Yeah, but still, it's another thing that's made that shoot rough, and it happened in Morocco. So, also on the side note, as a fan, Morocco. When are you shooting in Morocco?
I like this.
So, yeah. And another quick news, a visual artist named LV4 teamed with a hip-hop group called The Underachievers for a track called Harrison Ford. Does he have anything to do with this? No. Do they call the track Harrison Ford? Yep. I guess that's like the Gorillaz put out a song called Clint Eastwood, which is pretty great. And if we'll listen to just a hair of this so we don't anger the YouTube police,
sure.
Here's a little bit of The Underachievers and LV4 with Harrison Ford.
Never think I play my role, could call me Harrison Ford. Hand solo with the saber, Princess Leia with the Lord. Devil's letters from the west, I ship it back and blow it forward. Keep it strapped and full of tech like I was Indiana Jones.
And they do reference Indiana Jones and things in this. I don't know, does the song Clint Eastwood refer to the Deadpool or anything?
I don't think so. What is it? Do they reference Pink Cadillac? What is it? I got sunshine in a bag.
Yeah.
And I
think that's just called Clint Eastwood for grins.
Also, in fun news, Blade Runner 2049 is getting a 4K re-release. Now, imagine watching that at home in 4K. That'd be pretty sweet.
I am on the verge of buying a new TV because both of my TVs, my 15-year-old TVs, went kaput within about 2 weeks of each other. And first of all, anybody that's bought a TV recently, can you believe what these things weigh now? Because I transported a new bedroom TV and I picked it up with one hand. And then when I went to pick my old TV, my 15-year-old TV up to throw it away, I was like, it was the weight drop in 15 years is insane. But now I might be on the verge of getting a 4K TV.
Yeah. No, a friend of the show, Ray Scalacci, has a 70-incher, and so he's like, "Hey, listen, I had no problem during the pandemic watching movies at home.
No,
4K 70. I mean, it's like practically at the theater."
Yeah. Well, and also I'm the proud owner of my very first 4K DVD because I just bought Apocalypse Now so that we can talk about the great performance by the guy who plays Colonel Lucas. And so now I have a 4K DVD myself.
Who plays Colonel De Palma in that?
Colonel De Palma?
And then, of course, as ever, I Google Harrison Ford news because it's going to be something weird and wacky, like him thanking the firefighter who was retiring, or, hey,
I just love these out there doing stuff, man. It's just...
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, he's not shooting the movie, so he's out doing other stuff. But he's back now. But another thing that happened while he was off set, he was in Italy and he lost his credit card, and a guy returned it. So the cops returned it to Harrison Ford, and he was thrilled, took a photo with him, and the photo, of course, goes viral because it's a bunch of happy Italian cops and Ford holding up his credit card, to which he said, "Italy was as beautiful as it is honest."
Venice.
Also, Italy, huh?
Italy, huh?
Morocco and Italy. Of course, Morocco and Italy and Scotland. Of course, wherever else is amazing, they're there shooting.
I'm just glad they're globe hopping and, hitting some...
yes! Right? You've heard me bitch about, no more studios.
Yeah.
Get dysentery. Come on.
Get out there. Get injured. Get some dysentery.
One more quick recurring show segment before we get to the recap. This date in Ford history.
November 14th, 1977, Heroes is released, one of our favorite Harrison Ford hillbilly roles that we covered very recently.
And if you haven't seen it, we've got a show on it that'll get you more hyped. So go back in our archives, find the Heroes episode of the Ford Fiesta, listen to that. You'll get all fired up to go out and see this little scene, Henry Winkler, Sally Field movie with a great Harrison Ford being all Harrison Fordy in it.
And November 16th, 1998, Harrison Ford is named People's Sexiest Man Alive, and they just named a new Sexiest Man Alive, so this must occur at this time every year.
Oh, yes.
And this is for 6 days, 7 nights, the Random Hearts year. So
it's that era, yeah.
The earring Harrison Ford, right?
Yeah, so that was all sorts of talk, he got an earring, and he's probably 50-something in an earring.
But also,
went, what?
50-something getting Sexiest Man Alive. I mean, they only really give that to like 30 and 40-year-olds or 20-year-olds or whatever.
Or ageless Paul Rudd.
Or ageless Paul. Yeah, who knows how old he is.
There's a great meme going around with like somebody did the old age filter on the Avengers, so it's old Hemsworth, old Paul Rudd looks the same.
That's great. And also November 16th, 1998. Oh, right on the right after he was named People's Sexiest Man Alive.
Big day for Harrison Ford.
Big day. Fidole Harrison Fordi, a species of ant, is named after Harrison Ford for his conservation efforts. So there's an ant out there named after Harrison Ford. And Fidole, his dog, I guess.
But I love that, it had popped up that he had an ant species named after him. But I do love that it's actually on purpose. Like, just we're not for fans. It was for his conservation efforts because they're very well known that he's very vocal on that, which is cool. One of the things you dig about being a fan of his.
I know. It's cool, isn't it? Like, he does all this cool stuff on screen, but then off screen, you're like, he's conservationist. He's coming out for the Buddha, or not the Buddha, the
the Dalai Lama.
The Dalai Lama, like all that sort of stuff. It's really cool. He's just the greatest, and we will not stop saying that every episode. He's just the greatest.
All right, well, enough of that. Let's get to why we came. The Frisco Kid. Many of you may not know that film, so let's tell you what it's all about. The Western The Frisco Kid begins where you'd expect it to. In 1850 Poland at a yeshiva, a training institution for rabbis where a group of Hasidic Jews disagree loudly with one another and pound their fists upon a table, deliberating the fate of Avram Belinsky, played by Gene Wilder.
Avram is a terrible rabbi, finishing 87th in a class of 88, which gets you a congregation as far away from the yeshiva as possible. In America, where the gold rush has made San Francisco cosmopolitan enough to get its very own Jewish population.
An inconsistently appearing voiceover by Avram tells us he is bound for Philadelphia, which he calls the city where all brothers love each other, showcasing Avram's innocence as someone who's never been to an Eagles game. But upon arriving in the port city, he learns that the only boat to San Francisco for the next 2 months left a day early, stranding Avram with no choice but to travel across the great expanse of the American West, a kind of Fiddler on the Range, if you will.
I won't.
All right, then how about a Wild West version of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles?
Ooh!
There you go.
Avram is immediately bilked by a trio of con men who promise passage to Frisco in a covered wagon. But once on the open road, they beat him up, take all his money, and leave him and his clothes strewn about the ground. Avram slowly retrieves the clothing, giving the movie time to complete the opening credits.
To fit in better in America, Avram acts like a local by completely disrespecting an entire ethnic group, by confusing a passing band of Amish for Hasidic Jews. After treating the audience to some wonderful dueling dialects with Yiddish and Pennsylvania Dutch duking it out, Avram faints upon seeing the image of a cross on the elders' holy book.
The Amish take pity on him and give him money for train travel. Avram responds that he will never forget their kindness, and presumably tells his co-star of the kindness as well, so that 6 years later the world can be treated to witness.
That co-star, of course, is who this movie is really about. Harrison Ford plays Tommy Lillard, bank robber extraordinaire, whom the movie introduces to us on Avram's train. But curiously, does not introduce to Avram, as Tommy robs the passenger car while the rabbi is in the bathroom, and escapes before the two can meet, leaving us to wonder what the point of the scene actually was.
Avram disembarks the train miles before his destination because we've reached a Saturday, and as he explains in the conveniently reappearing voiceover, Saturday is the Sabbath, or Jewish holy day.
Saturday, Donnie, is Shabbos, the Jewish day of rest.
And no devout Jew does any riding on that day.
That means I don't work, I don't drive a car, I don't fucking ride in a car, I don't handle money, I don't turn on the oven, and I sure as shit don't fucking roll!
Instead of riding on the train, Avram gets work on the railroad, where his, shall we say, kosher workways meld well enough with the regular sounds of the spike driving crew.
Hey! Hey! Oi! Hey! Hey! Oi!
But where his aim leaves much to be desired, and his hammer repeatedly strikes the foot of the biggest bruiser in the gang, and hilarity ensues.
Hey! Oi!
Oh, Max Sennett, will you ever run out of comedy ideas?
Avram makes enough money to buy himself a horse to ride the rest of the way to San Francisco. But after raccoons eat all his food on his first night alone on the open range,
Ach du lieber Raccoon!
Avram shouts, "Why me?" to the heavens, as he's figuring out what occurred to this viewer 20 minutes ago. Maybe God hates this guy?
Right about now, we're starting to wonder where that handsome train robber went. But have no fear, for this is when Harrison Ford truly makes his entrance to help Avram, who is attempting to spear trout in a stream. But Tommy solves the problem of catching a fish the Ford Fiesta way, with gunplay.
How hungry are you?
I'm pretty hungry.
Some good-natured bonding then ensues over the campfire as Tommy quizzes Avram about where he's going and what his resources are.
Got any money?
No,
Got any food?
no,
Got Mel Brooks anywhere in the credits?
no.
You ain't gonna make it.
The two resolve to go their separate ways, but not before Tommy provides Avram with some pretty solid, AAA-worthy directions on how to get to Frisco.
Once I get to the desert, God willing, I just continue straight as piss till I come to the ocean. Take a left, keeping the ocean on my right shoulder, and just hot-tail it right into San Francisco.
Quickly realizing that Avram understands everything about the directions except how to get his horse to properly follow them, Tommy hastens the pair's reunion by deciding to stay with the rabbi and lead him into Frisco personally.
What do you call this in Jewish?
Tuchus.
Or you keep your eyes on this tuchus and don't take them off till I tell you.
Anything you say, Harrison. If there's one thing audiences of this show know, we'll follow that ass anywhere.
That is America's ass.
As the kosher Willy Wonka and the High Plains Han Solo make their way across the landscape, they engage in some good-natured banter, teaching each other the fine points of their respective languages.
What kind of word is that?
What word?
You always say she-it at a certain moment.
She-it? Well, you must have a word in your language that you... What do you say when you get really took by surprise?
Oi, Gewalt.
Oi, Gewalt?
Yeah?
That's it. That's what she-it means.
The two disagree on whether to continue in the winter weather. Avram wants to, but Ford says, "You ain't gonna talk me into it," which is maybe something he should have said to his agent about this script. Avram recklessly pushes on, but of course, heroic Harrison Ford doesn't leave him to die. He joins him, and as the two camp down for the night, they huddle in each other's arms for warmth, introducing the first strains of bromance into this tale.
To be kept warm in the arms of Harrison Ford. Definitely a step above being placed inside a downed Tauntaun for sure.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
Arriving in a new town, Avram at last recognizes the genre of movie he's in.
You know, I think this is the West. We're in the Wild West here.
As Tommy makes a quick stop off at the local bank to rob it, Avram finally learns what we've known all along. Tommy's official profession is bank robber.
A posse quickly forms among townfolk. At $11 a man, even the Old West pays better than the current minimum wage. And the two quickly find themselves being chased up into the hills. Avram objects to being made into a wanted man. The rabbi threatens to give the money back, and a fistfight ensues. Harrison Ford lands not only a solid punch, but a pretty good pistol whipping as well.
Then, of course, you recognize this is all being done against nebbishy little Gene Wilder. And you kind of feel bad that Harrison Ford is essentially punching down here. Also, Ford's first on-screen punch, as we've mentioned, was Jack Lemmon in Love, meaning that by this point in his career, Harrison Ford has hit one half of both The Odd Couple and The Producers. Not exactly one for the Tough Guy Hall of Fame.
The Sabbath hits at the worst time, with a bloodthirsty posse on their trail, which is not a time to refuse to ride a horse. As Tommy pleads for him to ride, Avram declares that he will walk his horse as fast as possible, but no riding until the sun goes down.
Would-be hilarity ensues as the two men bicker all day about this orthodox choice.
There ain't no Jews in that posse, you know. They'd as soon string you up on Saturday as any other day. They don't give a for your holidays, don't you know that?
And they get away from the posse anyway, proving that having Harrison Ford at your side is the best possible insurance against capture, even more so than an able-bodied horse. Then the cast of ships, trains, and horses comes upon a tribe of Indians.
Paul, I think that's Native Americans now.
Yeah, movie calls them Indians, so I think we can too. Anyway, the pair successfully get away, only to have Avram lose his Torah in the process. Against Tommy's protests, he goes back for it, and they get caught by the tribe, and are on the verge of being burned at the stake, only to be spared by the chief when he is impressed by Avram's devotion to his holy book. Oh, and then it rains. The Indians had been praying for rain, apparently, so this makes them duly impressed with Avram and his god.
After some brief dancing and peyote eating, suddenly we're in a Franciscan monastery, because this movie. It's basically a long setup to a breaking a vow of silence joke. And then just as quickly as we somehow ended up in a monastery, we are on to the next scene.
And then...
Right? Yeah, right.
At the next town, Avram goes to the Wells Fargo office and returns his half of the stolen money from the bank job Tommy pulled off earlier. An action which so enrages Tommy that he does, in fact, here deliver one of Harrison Ford's greatest lines.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get me a bath. Then I'm going to get drunk. Then I'm going to catch me a whore with great big tits. Then I'm going to get drunk again. Then I'm going to rob that Wells Fargo office and get my money back.
At a local bar, Avram runs into the 3 shifty varmints who beat and robbed him before the opening credits were through. When Avram demands his money back, he finds himself in a confrontation only the quick gun hand of Han Solo himself can extricate him from.
Nobody move.
Sorry about the mess.
On the next day's ride, they reach the Pacific Ocean and decide to split up again. As Tommy instructs Avram, he is just a sharp right away from that straight-as-piss ride into San Francisco.
San Francisco!
Tommy himself will be taking a left, heading to Sutter's Mill where the gold is.
This is where the movie goes full-on I love you man, as Avram tearfully proclaims Tommy his best friend in the whole world, and that he wants him to be best man at his wedding. Here Tommy realizes that, against all his usual instincts, there's more to him than just money.
Hey, I knew that was more to you than money.
And decides to follow his friend into San Francisco instead.
But first, they inaugurate their BFF status Rocky III style by stripping down to their skivvies and taking a dip in the ocean together. With their guard down, the 3 con men return and get the drop on them. It looks bleak for our heroes indeed until our heretofore simple innocent rabbi decides to go all wrath of God, picking up a loose gun and killing one of the men.
What would prompt him to do this, you ask? Well, clearly you have not been party to this masterful Harrison Ford harangue. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you 53 seconds of pure Ford glory.
He's out of bullets! He dropped the gun! Get the gun! Shoot him! They're right there, look! It's in the sand! Don't let him grab the other gun! Shoot him! He's gonna kill us! Shoot him! Shoot him, Abram! He's going for the other gun! Shoot him, for Christ's sake! Shoot him! Help me! He's gonna kill us! Shoot him! Shoot him, Abram! Shoot him! Don't you understand? He's going for the other gun! Don't let him grab that gun! Don't let him grab the other gun! There! There, right there! Look! It's in the sand! Shoot him, Abram! Shoot him!
Regardless of this top-notch salesmanship for gunplay, Avram feels pangs of guilt at murdering a man in cold blood. Rabbi, you know. He feels he's no longer fit to be a rabbi after this most recent display. This earns him a serious dressing down Harrison Ford style from Tommy, including 13 righteous anger-fueled finger points.
You are a rabbi. You can fall in the mud, you can slip on your ass, you can travel in the wrong direction. But even on your ass, even in the mud, even if you go in the wrong direction for a little while, you're still a rabbi. That's what you are.
No one can possibly face that much Harrison Ford without reconsidering.
And so Avram does. Not a moment too soon, as he and Tommy are descended upon by the congregation he is set to lead, including the daughter of the town elder to which he has been betrothed.
But hold on now, before you can bust a chorus of Sunrise Sunset, into the same restaurant pops the surviving member of the trio of varmints they just dueled with on the beach. He challenges Avram to a fair fight on the streets of San Francisco.
But like a good rabbi, he has suddenly decided again to... But like the good rabbi...
Like a good rabbi... I'm sorry.
But like the good rabbi he has suddenly decided to be, Avram refuses to draw his gun. A noble and principled stand until you realize he has the full gun-toting might of Harrison Ford there to back him up. This eventually makes the varmint back down, whereupon Avram tells him to get the hell out of town.
Varmint, a word generally not used enough. A wedding, dancing, a final wandering voiceover, and closing credits quickly follow. And I do mean quickly. It's like once they got to this point in the movie, everyone in the production office suddenly all realized they were into golden time, so that's a wrap. And that's the Frisco Kid, everybody. There you go. The Frisco Kid. That was. All right, let's give our thoughts on this one, because it's a long timer with both of us. 1979 is when it came out, and so we've been around this movie for a long time, but I'll be damned if I remember liking it, and you'll be damned if you can confirm it ever came out. So where do we stand now? I'll lead with saying, yeah, I don't care for it much.
No.
That didn't change. Moments, but overall...
It started with a terrible script, and nobody did anything with it beyond how it just laid there so flat. It's like an exercise in how not to write, because it's another, and this, and then this happened. And it commits the worst sin of this type of high concept movie, which I've always said about Suicide Squad, is if the audience can imagine all of the crazy potential of this premise. So a Jewish guy goes to the Old West, right? A rabbi goes to the Old West. If you can imagine all of the crazy potential, and then it lives up to, it didn't think of any of them. Oh, I see Blazing Saddles, but with a rabbi who comes to town. I got it. And it does none of that. It doesn't even try. It didn't even think of all the potential of this fish out of water story. It didn't think of any of it.
Well, apparently America agreed. On a $9.2 million budget, it made, and these are very specific stats according to Internet, $9.3 million. So didn't make back its marketing budget. So the tagline must have not brought them in either. The greatest cowboy to ever ride into the Wild West from Poland.
That's the tagline?
Yes. That's on the poster. And that's a setup that, again, we can get behind. But the execution was far from... And when you look at, like, the DVD that you gave me, I mean, they just throw the word comedy around all the time. You know, they're a feisty team in this rough and ready romp. Robert Aldrich is a seasoned hand at blending roughhouse and laughter, of riding tall in the comedy saddle. Not funny enough.
This is a weird choice for him also. Is this a weird choice or what?
No, he is needing The Empire Strikes Back at this point.
Right.
And I never knew until watching all these films in succession how important Raiders of the Lost Ark was in terms of cementing his superstar status. I mean,
right.
Because, you know, the sequel to Star Wars comes along and it's really good. And everyone's like, okay, this guy's great. And then he couldn't Heroes, Force 10... you know, and Hanover Street and Frisco Kid, his follow-ups to Empire. You know, he had to go, all right, what am I going to do so I don't do this quartet of subpar, I need another blockbuster to be the Harrison Ford that we're all going to be. And then Raiders came in and was that movie, and thank God, because now we're all happy because of Harrison Ford being who he is.
It's amazing how little Harrison Ford, or how little Han Solo proved to the Hollywood that this was something special. You just look at the career of an actor and it's like, wow, it didn't actually give him a bump.
Yeah.
Whereas Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill in anything between Star Wars and
Corvette
Empire?
Summer. Mark Hamill did Corvette Summer.
Right. It did nothing for their careers. It did a Jake Lloyd for them. It did nothing.
And I got a controversial take. I think Gene Wilder was in a lot of bad movies.
Yes.
Because when he hams it up here when there's nothing going on in the script to get the scene over the hump, I recognize that hamming. I'm like, oh, he does that a lot when there's like in a Haunted Honeymoon or a Hanky Panky or the late movies he made with Pryor, like See No Evil, Hear No Evil.
Right.
They just do the screaming thing, act like the panicked thing, you do all that stuff, but it's like there was nothing underneath it. I see this with Melissa McCarthy now. Give that girl a script, because you can't rely on her just natural comedic instincts to take the scene over the top. You need the script.
I watched all the Pink Panther movies with Stephen Lewis, and there was a certain aspect to comedy which was take a not that funny script and just have the comedian at the center of it work his ass off. Like Peter Sellers, you know, The Party, one scene, one location, and very few jokes, and you go in and work your ass off. Just work your ass off, Peter Sellers. And that's how a comedy was made prior to Animal House.
Frisco Kid was in development for 7 years. So,
oh my God.
Before Ford was in Star Wars, you know, so they had to be psyched to get him attached once it's flailing for a while. And then Star Wars, like, oh, that guy, he's in. Yes, we're going to make this thing. You know, it'll be great. And then all that time, and they didn't quite flesh it all out the way they... You know, all they came up with was, we got Rabbi Avram, and he's Ted Lassoing his way through the Old West.
Right.
You know, being nice to everybody. And
yeah.
That's enough? No, we need laughs. It needed laughs.
No, and it was so misguided that all these scenes, you could see what the comic potential was supposed to be, and then there would be no outline. There would be no punchline, and then it would just end. It would think it had a punchline.
Yeah.
Like things were said that was like, wrap up sentence, but you're like, that's it? That's how you wrapped up that whole thing? And he just goes from one scenario to the next. He's dropped off in America, and I forget what the opening scene with the other rabbis is. Let's send him to America because they hate him, because he's Jar Jar Binks, he's clumsy. No, he goes and works for a railroad, and they say he's so bad at that. And it's the most like hacky, he tries to carry a pitcher of water, but he's got a 2x4 carried from a 2x4. And oh no, he conked 2 guys in the head with a 2x4.
I just bring up your take on Evan Almighty. We went to the premiere of Evan Almighty years ago,
right.
and there was scenes happening earlier in that film, and you could already tell, ooh, this is not going to be good. And there was some scene between 2 of the kids, and then they said a couple of things, and then it cut to the next scene, and you went, wow, Judd Apatow would have found a way to put a joke in there.
Right.
And that
Some
was
sort
what
of
happened all the time here.
conversation.
Like they're eating fish that they caught
Right.
in the Frisco Kid, and they caught them because Harrison Ford's character shot them, and
Yes.
so that's kind of funny. And so they're eating the fish, and he says, "What do you call this fish?" He says, "It's called a trout. It's got a lot of bones." Then they cut to the next scene.
That's it.
I'm like, that's the line you're
the
going
line.
out on?
Sure talk funny. Where you born at?
This really felt like a rejected Jerry Lewis script of this
Yeah,
time.
it's kind of my read there kind of helped enforce that. It's got a lot of bones with the Glavin.
But like the 1979 hardly working era of Jerry Lewis, you're like, and then Jerry's funny, and then Gene is funny. We watched the trailer as well, which was like, you loved him in Blazing Saddles. You loved him in Young Frankenstein. You loved him in Silver Streak.
But then they look at a photo of his wife, because he also is traveling to San Francisco, not only to be a rabbi, but he's going to get married. So the wife's been picked out, and they look at the photos of the wife, and they say, oh, this, and Harrison Ford says, oh, the other girl in this picture is pretty cute too. That's it. Like, was there room for a joke maybe? Or something clever? Or a reason to have the scene?
Or even I sure hope they make it to San Francisco, because the only thing tying this whole thing together is that he's headed towards San Francisco. And when he gets there, the movie can theoretically end.
Yes, gracefully. And then, of course, they look at that photo, they go to sleep, and before they do, Avram says, "I'll try to be as quiet as possible." Scene end. I mean, this just kept happening.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a funny enough line. I mean,
again, coming off the Peter Sellers thing was like, just doing the Clouseau accent was meant to get a lot of jokes that for underbaked scenes in the Pink Panther, and I see that the same as here. Is like, I guess just doing that overly Jewish, rabbi voice was supposed to get a lot of the laughs because there were no jokes written in.
I think the half-baked remake of the Pink Panther, as much as I love Steve Martin, was one of his biggest hits, but for some reason that did not land on me at all.
Yeah.
And sure enough, their biggest bit is that he can't say hamburger.
Right.
So it's like all we got is the funny French because we got nothing else.
Yeah.
By the time the movie ends, there's fairly dramatic Western sequences that I like. He gets called out. They all go out in the town, and there's drama there and suspense, and what's going to happen? So maybe they should have just been dramatic through the whole thing.
Right.
Don't pretend it's a joke fest. Don't pretend it's a comedy. Just like show us a dramatic tale of a fish out of water who has to really survive the elements and get to where he's going. And I don't know, cast somebody else besides Gene Wilder.
I think you're onto something. This may not have been a comedy until they cast Gene Wilder, and now it's got to be Blazing Saddles, but it doesn't even try and be Blazing Saddles, except that it is clearly the actor from Blazing Saddles in the Cleavon Little position, although they avoid that like crazy, but they might as well just have him go into town and defend the town from the town punks. I mean, it ultimately ends up there. They meet a villain along the way, played by William Smith, who just had a 2-week festival at the New Beverly that I was a part of. So it was kind of cool to see him as a villain in this. Sort of capped off my Any Which Way You Can and Rumblefish Swinging Barmaids Hollywood Man Festival over at the New Beverly.
Yeah, they didn't include this, though.
They didn't, and we realized halfway through exactly why.
Gene Wilder didn't even sign on to the project until it got many rewrites under its belt. So,
oh my God.
Imagine how it was like 4 rewrites.
You look at these scenes and you're like, everybody's got to realize this scene isn't working. The director's got to realize it. The writer's got to realize it. The actors have to realize, like, this scene ain't working. Sometimes you watch an actor work their ass off to try and make something work. I don't even know if they were doing that in these scenes. I mean, they're acting. It's a lot of talk.
And director Robert Aldrich, who made Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, The Dirty Dozen, and The Longest Yard, clearly has made it, a comedy and made an action film. I think he could blend the two. But the interesting story I read is that John Wayne was originally courted to play Tommy Lillard, Harrison Ford's character. He had made True Grit and Rooster Cogburn and thought, hey, a comedic sort of follow-up to those might be a good idea. Ford remarked later that director Robert Aldrich always looked at him on the set as if he was disappointed that he wasn't John Wayne.
Oh, God.
But he said, but it was fun to work with Gene. And it was interesting to see, it was fun to work with Gene. Like, we're on like 4 or 5 movies in a row now where he's like, I didn't have any fun making it. I didn't enjoy this project. I don't know why I was part of it. And here, this one, probably not the best of the bunch. And he's like, well, I enjoyed working with Gene. So...
This is the preeminent comedian of the time. This is the guy from, those other movies we just mentioned. He's an epic comedian, and Harrison Ford is not going to do a comedy again to win. Working Girl?
You're looking at Blade Runner, more Star Wars movies, 2 more Indiana Jones movies, Witness, Mosquito Coast. Yeah, he's not getting funny again until Working Girl.
And is this his only comedy so far?
Yeah, unless you count American Graffiti.
But this is a straight-up comedy. This is Gene Wilder, Fish Out of Water, so... he gets all the cowboy moments. He gets to draw his gun. He gets to fire. He gets to shout stuff. He gets to curse. He gets to say, I'm going to have me a drink. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, all with the Western accent. And, it's so obnoxious that for such an epic actor that Harrison Ford is, there's no Western treatment of him. There's no John Wayne shots. There's no Clint Eastwood cowboy moments, classic Western moments. He has a few, but he's in a Bogart role here. He's in a classic Western character role, and he doesn't get to do anything with it.
I mean, he's kind of in a legit John Wayne role from Liberty Valance, because in that you have Jimmy Stewart, who's the meek sort of, book smart guy, and in this you have Gene Wilder, who's that. And then on either side of them, really doing all the muscle work, is John Wayne and Harrison Ford. So they're comparable parts. But, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Robert Aldrich is John Ford. So...
No.
By no means. But let's talk more about Harrison Ford, because we're crapping on this movie, but there's so much great stuff.
This is what we're here for. Well, that's the great thing is, I mean, he is, you look at his face in this. His face is slightly changing between movies. That what we have right now is the face of Harrison Ford in Empire Strikes Back. And so all the facial features and all the little furrows of his brow and stuff, it's like I relate all of these as moments we've seen. There's a lot of classic Harrison Ford in everything he says and does, and the way his tone is just like, there's not a single thing he says in this that ain't Harrison Ford sounding as can be.
You can tell that he's about to go shoot the hallway sequence on Hoth with Leia, right? Like, all that stuff. You can see it's there. It's waiting to come out with a better director and a better story.
But he's way comfortable. He knows his Harrison Fordness now. Earlier movies we were watching, he's nervous or trying to play something that he will never play again, kind of, because it's just ill fit. But he's figuring it out. He's not charming comedy guy in Star Wars, but he's got charm. But he's about to be charming and funny in Empire Strikes Back, and he really gets that here. He's all action in Force 10. He's all lover boy in Hanover Street, and he's all funny here. So you add all those three together before Empire Strikes Back, and that's what we get in Empire Strikes Back. So it's pretty cool.
And Warner Brothers knows it too, because, and it's funny, we watched your DVD today, and on the poster for the Frisco Kid, it's a picture of Gene Wilder with his hand on his hat going, whoa, riding a horse, and in the bottom corner is a picture of Harrison Ford. And then by the time the DVD comes out, big picture of Harrison Ford, tiny picture of Gene Wilder in the corner.
You showed me the poster from the release of the movie. It's a Drew Struzan.
Yeah, that was a separate one.
That was a great poster. And obviously the DVD comes from, in the 90s, they would not, you had to get the rights from that artist to use that poster. So that's only for special editions now, much like Force 10 from Navarone. I just saw they've released a Blu-ray of that, and that's got that poster that we love with the big painting and everything,
Like the dam breaking and everyone running.
The dam breaking. Yeah, because they just did a Blu-ray remaster of that movie, which I may have to buy. I think I need to see that in super high fidelity. But this one, it's got the classic 1992, put two heads together, and yeah. It's just so fun to watch Harrison Ford, everything he says in this. I mean, obviously we're going into it as a fan to love everything he says, but everything he delivers in terms of being very Harrison Ford, he gets a lot more Harrison Ford in this than Force 10. And
unfortunately for me, it was backloaded. Like his sequence where he's at the end at dinner when he's trying to get Avram to realize that despite the fact that he shot a man, he could still be a good rabbi was hilarious. He's so frustrated. He's throwing bread rolls and like over gesturing and getting nuts, and it was funny. And then he goes out in the street and has to interrupt the duel, and that's when he finally they kind of film him sort of like a classic cowboy western type figure. So he had a go ahead make my day type moment with the villain, and it's like, oh, that's great, and then credits. I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to get a whole movie of that.
And he saves the day a couple times. I mean, there's a moment earlier where there's a bar fight, and it's almost got the same suspense of like Tote holding the iron, your fire is dying, up to Marion and Raiders, and I'm like, come on, Indy, and then it's like, boom,
let her go.
Nobody move.
It's in the same tone as Let Her Go, but it's so there is a lot of fun Harrison Ford. Again, as scholars, as like, we're eating up every line this guy says. We're eating up every close-up they're going to give this guy, any kind of classic Western moment. And, he's on Solo.
It feels like the first and last time we'll see him in a cravat.
Oh, yes.
He's classic cowboy the whole movie. A little bit of Willie Bill from Journey to Shiloh there. But by the end, there's an upscale, wedding, and he's dressed up. And it's like, oh, I don't think I've ever seen him look like that.
Yeah, period piece dapper. He's period piece dapper. In fact, I mean, how many period pieces is he going to do again?
Raiders is 1930s.
Yeah.
But then, then he goes on to like a macho white guy, Jack Ryan and Frantic and John Book.
Yeah, period pieces are going to be restricted to only Indiana Jones and Cowboys and Aliens.
Pretty much.
Like, I think this is the last hillbilly he plays, although he does play a country guy in, a sheriff, but more respected or whatever in Cowboys and Aliens. I'm very curious to see that now because I've never seen that movie.
I can't believe you didn't see Indiana Jones and James Bond fight aliens.
Right.
Well, this will be fun.
Can't believe either. And also, and now I'm looking at Willie Bill and whatever this character's name was, Frisco Kid.
Tommy Lillard.
Tommy Lillard.
Tommy Lillard. Put that in your list. But this was not a great time for Westerns. A whole bunch of them were tanking, and even right around the years that this came out, 78 to 80, you had Going South, The Villain, and The Legend of the Lone Ranger with Clinton Spilsbury, which you always love to bring up.
I love that movie.
They all kind of tanked around this. Nicholson was in Going South. Did you think they'd have a shot? Nope. He's got his Oscar with Cuckoo's Nest. He's doing The Last Detail and all that, and he kind of takes a dip with that, comes back with Terms of Endearment, and then The Villain, I saw that at the New Beverly a little while back. I've wanted to see that for years. It looked like Kirk Douglas and Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Wile E. Coyote type movie, and man, that was not funny enough either. So that's a curse here as well. And The Legend of the Lone Ranger, I never saw it. But
the Western was dead. Like that, like Pale Rider came out and they'd be like, only one person can make a Western that's a hit, and it's Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
And then nobody made Westerns until like Unforgiven, and then they made like 100 Westerns the next year.
Yeah.
It was dead. It was a dead genre. Of all the film brats that came back and they brought back all these genres, the mob movie was nothing. Then they made The Godfather. Sci-fi was pure B-movie bunk. They made Star Wars, but none of them, nobody did a Western. Nobody really tried to bring back the Western, did they?
Unforgiven, winning the Oscar and everything was just a major leap for that genre.
Well, and that was famously under development for like 15 years also, and I think, so this being under development, that being under development for that long is like, the Western is dead, so it's hard to shoot one, and then none of these help sell the cause of the Western as a classic genre.
Other things you might see if you were looking in the film, Vincent Schiavelli,
yeah,
the tallest, weirdest dude of the 80s and 90s that you're going to find, and 70s clearly as well.
Yeah, suddenly we're in a monastery, right? He takes some mushrooms with some natives, because we end up with natives at some point, because this movie just continues moving on from possible comedic premise to possible comedic premise, doing nothing with each. And then he wakes up with monks, a different religion. Oh boy, I can't wait to see what is going to happen when a rabbi in the Old West meets a bunch of monks. Oh, they'd taken a vow of silence, and he says, "Can you pass the salt?" And Vincent Schiavelli breaks his vow of silence and says, "Here."
Oh yeah, no, he says like, "Thank you." He says, "You're welcome."
You're welcome.
And then they all laugh and break their vow of silence.
God. Right.
Yeah. If you like, I'm sure we'll see this dude later in Witness. There was one Amish dude in the Amish people scene who was an Amish dude in Witness.
Oh, really?
I looked up his name. I couldn't figure out what it was, but as far as I know, he never played anything other than Amish. that was so that was interesting seeing him. And then Val Bisoglio played the Indian chief. Last thing he was in was in The Sopranos, so he might have been an Italian dude playing the Indian chief.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be for this time.
And we mentioned William Smith, so yeah, there's not a huge lot of notable characters in the supporting cast, but you're there for Ford and Wilder. So
hey, a lot of Ford on a horse. Now, what's our previous record of Ford on a horse is nothing. I mean, he's on a horse briefly in Journey to Shiloh. I mean, I guess he's on a horse a lot in Journey to Shiloh, but I mean, that's whatever. But this is like real cowboy horse running away, shooting, firing. Yeah. It's the classic image, and we're going to see him on a horse a lot. That's a Harrison Ford mainstay.
Yeah, and when you do, it's him. He's famous for doing his own stunts, but I mean, clearly was one of the biggest stunts he did in Raiders, chasing down the truck and jumping onto it and all that stuff. So yeah, he was big on the horse, and it started here in the 70s. Yeah. So everything else in concerning this movie's legacy, it batted about 500 in reviews, but Wilder got mostly positive notes pretty much across the board, which is interesting because I thought he was hamming it up a bit, but it also got very positive response as a Jewish movie. And sure enough, his character is very nice and kind and operates from the best of people in situations in the West that are dirty and filthy and full of nefarious folks. So I get that, but I haven't looked at this to get excited about much of it. So that was interesting to read.
It pokes no fun at the Jewish faith. It's
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why the jokes aren't there for that, because it's so reverent towards it that you can't have fun with it.
Well, and part of the plot is, he drops the Torah, somebody else picks it up, and he has to go back for the Torah. He puts himself in a lot of danger to get his Torah back.
Yeah, but I think you're right that it doesn't, a rabbi in the desert, well, he's just going to be so pious and forthright that it won't be that fun.
Literally, several times in this movie, a cowboy and a rabbi walk into a bar and nothing happens. I mean, really, you don't get much more basic than that.
It sets itself up.
Numerous times, a rabbi and a cowboy walk into a bar and nothing happens. Unforgivable.
Well, that ain't the American way.
That's the biggest laugh I got yet.
Harrison Ford plays a bank robber, and so he gets to be a classic. He pulls the handkerchief over his face. Nobody move. We get all the "you dirty rats." We get all the "put it down." We get all the draw. We get him saying every single Western line, including put your hands up and give me all your money. And we're gonna make this like a church. Everybody, put your money in the.
There's a guy in the back of the train with a gun. Don't turn around if you want to live. I had all that stuff. It's true. Yeah, I liked watching him do that.
But they go to a town and he doesn't know that Harrison Ford's a bank robber, and Harrison Ford's like, "I'll be right back," and he just walks into the bank. It reminded me of Raising Arizona. I was like, "Baby needs some Huggies."
I'll be taking these Huggies. Any cash you got?
Yeah, and he walks out of the bank with a gun and money, and they're like, "All right, let's go." And that's the first that Gene Wilder's hearing about it.
Yeah.
But that adds to the morality thing too. Again, very, like a rabbi would never steal, and of course he ends up having to shoot someone. A man of faith being challenged by a new world. And of course, looking back, you go, "Oh, I guess he was really challenged in his faith."
Even the way you've described it sounds dramatic. They just probably should have gone that route. All right, but in the Harrison Ford list of essentials, does he have righteous anger? Oh, yes. Many times.
My gosh. I have 6 instances of righteous anger. There's more because there were run-on sentences, and I counted each of those as an instance of anger. So if he said 5 things in one scene, angry, I still only counted that as an instance of anger rather than count every single line. But that's a lot of it. I mean, come on, man. I mean, for this far in Harrison Ford, that is a ton of Harrison Ford anger. Righteous anger most of the time. Sometimes just angry, but mostly righteous anger. You can't go that way. You'll die.
Yeah, and we all know that pointing is to Harrison Ford as running is to Tom Cruise, and he gets ample pointing in this. In fact, probably making up for lack of points in some previous films, he gets a ton of pointing in here.
Paul, I have 15 points in this movie. He points 15 times, and at that scene at the restaurant, it became really, really funny because you're cheering for him to keep going as he's making each point. And you're like, come on, point at him again. And he does it. Come on, point him at again.
You're a good man. I love this. Yeah, just point again.
It's amazing. I mean, we got excited about, in Force 10, he points at 2 people and 3 things. But here, you have 15 points all at people.
And pointing is the main thrust of his, no pun intended, point of the argument. If I'm not pointing, I'm not making my point in this particular scene. It's just, you needed this and you needed that. You're a better person than you think. And you, so much you. He had to point at him so he remembered who he was talking about. And does he smile and charm? Yeah, I mean, he's smiling in the end there. He smiles every once in a while before then. He seems to smile when he gets away with a robbery. Not a ton of it. He's not in Working Girl charm, but
so there's no smiling when they're playing out the odd couple portion of it, where the 2 are trying to make it through the West and stepping on each other's toes and stuff. So he didn't really get to smile there. But yeah, when he shows up and cleans up, certainly when he's wearing the cravat, he's got some smiles going on there.
I think shouting and growling, that's all been covered by the previous things. Does he hit a guy? Well, the punch count here...
Hold on a second, Paul. Don't skip over shouts.
Oh, yes?
Because we have something to talk about here.
Get the gun!
Okay. Oh, yes.
Yes. All right. So there is a scene, and this is one of the best scenes. We're sitting here, we're noting that there's 1 shout in this movie, or 2 shouts. We dig around and we find 1 point. But so here, when it comes to shouts in this movie, he'd already shouted 6 times, good shouts, and then Gene Wilder has to grab a gun to defend them and shoot the bad guy. And so Harrison Ford starts shouting, "Get the gun!" It continues and continues and continues. And in that one scene, he had 34 shouts.
Shoot him, for Christ's sake, shoot him!
55 seconds of shouting.
That is never going to be beat. That is
isn't.
The thrill of a lifetime for us collecting these statistics. Right. A total of 40 shouts in this movie.
Shoot him, Abrams!
Like 34 in that scene and 6 other shouts. 40 shouts. Get the gun!
Get the gun!
Get him in!
Shoot him, Abrams!
He's gonna kill you!
He's gonna kill us! Shoot him!
Grab the gun!
There.
Shoot him!
Shoot him, Abrams!
It's in the sand!
It's in the sand!
You gotta get it!
There, right there!
And you just imagine the ADR session where the guy's just like, yeah, give me like 50 alternate takes here. Let's just keep going, Harrison. Just keep going,
when you think of shouting, you think of things like, "Dad, come on!" In like Last Crusade, he's yelling at Sean Connery. But I'm curious to watch that movie now and count the shouts, because it's not going to be close. Even though he does it all the time. Dad, what? Dad, what? All that. I still don't think he's going to come close. It's just this scene, this shout-a-thon of 28 lines in a row or something like that.
Okay, no, 28 in that scene, 6 before it, and then 5 after it. Okay, so maybe I don't know what my math is there, because I don't know if I added that shout. Oh no, I did. So 40 total. Yeah, I think
you're
that's
like
40.
the Frank Janish of the Ford Fiesta.
Right. This is so great. These statistics are so enjoyable. I mean, he shoots 5 things or people,
and he shoots so much. We probably were denied a number more punches. He ends up cowboying it and shooting a lot more. So we've got denied.
Yeah, only 2 punches.
Yeah,
only 2 punches. But he shoots 2 guys in the head. He shoots 2 fish, and then shoots 1 other person, I think.
Now, the 2 punches are of the same guy in the same fight, but that counts, right? So, yeah.
You and I, we might as well have cat's ears, and when we hear a shout or a point or, any of the essentials, our ears perk up. So in that scene, it's like he shouts, and we both look at each other, yay, we got a shout. And then he shouts again. Then he shouts again. Then he shouts again. And then we just start laughing. We're like, oh my God, is he going to keep going? And he just keeps going. We had to back it up. I'm like, I got to rewind
that. Yeah, we had to rewind that.
Wow. And that just turned this into an epic movie, because we've been paying attention to the Ford Essentials, and this has the Ford Essentials like crazy.
So with that's a career total to date, I believe, if my math is right. You seem to be the stats guy here, but that's 8 punches. That's Jack Lemmon, Barbara Bach, a bunch of Nazis, and Gene Wilder twice. Punched him and then pistol whipped him, which is kind of a punch.
Oh, right. That's why I count that twice. Yes, that's right. We had that discussion.
So how Harrison Ford is he in this then?
Well, I mean, these aspects are merely portions of an overall Harrison Ford. I mean, you can shout a lot. You can have a lot of righteous anger. You could shoot some guys and punch some guys. But is that the whole deal, Paul? Does that an epic Harrison Ford performance make? how Harrison Ford is he? He only feels 60% Harrison Ford for some reason.
Yeah, but it's because the movie isn't epic. That doesn't help, you know? So it's kind of like...
But within it...
I might go up to 70 just because he does everything that you want, but for not great results.
Yeah.
But
you're right. I mean, the shouts alone, the shouts and point. I mean, he points so much in this movie. There's so much righteous anger, so many points, and so many shouts, and so many gunshots and punches. I mean, wow.
I started off talking about how I didn't care for this movie. I'm liking it more now that I just focus on Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
I think I'll like most things more if I just do that.
It's true.
And we don't just count shouts and anger because we like that and that's a Harrison Ford essential. It's we love the sound of his voice when he does it. And, you know, we've counted shouts before that don't sound like Harrison Ford, that don't sound as, Dad, what? You know, like that sort of, that squealy, you know, shout. That's every shout in this movie.
Come on, Dad.
Yeah. I mean, so every one of those and on all the anger is is perfect Harrison Ford anger. So it just all hits that spot. You just like, it feels very Harrison Ford, even though it's not an iconic, he never cuts a heroic figure the way he could as a cowboy. He doesn't live up to that potential, but he's a cowboy. He's just like Han Solo. That's pretty damn Harrison Ford.
Yep. Cowboy, space cowboy, you can do them both.
An epic character of Hollywood, a cowboy, you know, the archetype, and he is cut from movie marble. And so this is, so yeah, I mean, we go 70, 75. What do you think? 70 sounds good. The other thing that's exhibited, and it's not a Harrison Ford essential, but look, we have studied Harrison Ford's performances intricately. We know every little nuance he does, and we see him all here. We see him on display, and this is what we're in for. You could have the worst Harrison Ford movie, but he's always going to be Harrison Ford in that movie. And the one thing that's exhibited a lot in this, which is real fun, and I have written down here the word proper from Return of the Jedi. It was against my programming to impersonate a deity. It wouldn't be proper. And Harrison Ford goes, proper. Now, that furrowed brow, that confused look, we've seen before, and playing weirder characters and stuff where he's using that as an affect. But that version of proper, that furrowed brow, is in a lot of this movie, and that's a really fun, like, everything he says is super Harrison Ford, but all the variety of Harrison Ford, including proper.
I'm not gonna calm down. That's working, girl. But he does similarly furrowed brow.
All right.
I'm not gonna calm down.
Right. That's a mode of anger. It's not, we've been counting anger largely loud anger, but that's also a classic.
All right, well, that wraps the Frisco Kid, and you won't find Harrison Ford in the Old West again until there are aliens involved.
On the next show, it's going to be a bit of a blast from the past. We are going to get to watch a Harrison Ford movie, wondering when he's going to show up. We've been pretty spoiled so far, but the next show, we get to watch and wait and wonder when Harrison Ford is actually going to make a very tiny appearance in a movie we're going to watch all of.
That would be More American Graffiti, and William Bibiani will be our special guest for that episode, because it turns out he likes this movie better than the original American Graffiti, so we have to hear about that.
And this is what I love about William Bibiani. Paul, there is 0% chance we're going to walk out of that conversation without highly considering the fact that it is better than American Graffiti. That is Bibiani right there. So I'm so excited. And he pinned us down. He goes, can I talk about More American Graffiti? Like, we hadn't even approached any guests. I love that. I mean, that is the most on-brand William Bibiani thing to go, guys, can I request a movie? And we're like, okay, which movie is going to be? More American Graffiti. I love it. I can't wait.
And when we hear it from him, so will you, and we'll see you then.